Today I'm walking my brother through the exact strategy I use to actually take trades in the market. But instead of just explaining it, we're breaking down real trade examples step by step. You're gonna see how I read price action, identify key levels, and wait for confirmation before entering. It's not guessing, it's not predicting, because the truth is most beginners don't lose because they lack trading knowledge or strategy patterns. They lose because they're doing too much too fast. So in this video, we're simplifying everything, focusing on one repeatable system, how the market actually moves, and how to execute with confidence. If you follow along, you'll start to see the market the way I do when I'm trading live every single morning. So let's walk through it and start taking trades the right way. Okay, so
Episode 3.
I guess first thing is like this week we want to try and get you ready for trading. Yeah, so I guess we want to try and get you set up with like the indicators I use or just the quality of life things for NinjaTrader that I use, and then we can talk more about like actually entering in trades and how to execute that stuff. And we can go over the strategy a little bit. Like I have this PDF that I made that I can send to you that kind of just has like a nice like quick overview of each of the like 5 steps.
Yeah,
6 steps, I guess, if you count trade management. And so I can send that to you, and anyone else that wants that, I can put that in the description below of the video. From what I understand, is like you have a rough idea of the strategy, and I think talking about like we can talk about some examples. Like today and yesterday had great examples, and some trades I took last week, and kind of talk about those, and we'll probably really hash out.
Yeah, I'm getting more to the point where like I can figure out where kind of the first 2 things are happening. If it seems to be getting into a zone of something seems like it could happen here, but then I'm not quite sure what I'm looking for to tell me what's going to happen or what I should be specifically looking for.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cameron, I guess we could just talk about I'm just thinking like maybe it makes more sense to do like give you the indicators and that kind of setup later, and we can talk about kind of the trade setup that happened this morning and some chart examples. You were watching the market this morning. What did you kind of, we had this spot on where the market opened up here, at 9:30.
Yeah.
And then we came down to this 15-minute timing. And kind of the levels I was looking at into today was just kind of this range we had.
Yeah, those are the same 2 that I identified and was looking at. And then I had some other larger, oh gosh, wrong button.
Some like zoomed
kind of
out
like
ones.
Yeah, zoomed out of like generally the market's been going up and having upward pressure, but obviously for the last day or so it's been in that little channel.
This is just overnight. Market closed.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the overnight close line right here.
Yeah. Okay.
But this is definitely like a common thing where a lot of times like the market will have some spike up and then like it'll be in this channel.
I saw it kind of going along this channel, and so I was thinking it's probably going to do something where it's just keep bouncing in between the 2. And so then we got into that spot that you were looking at, and I think I was looking at it more on NQ because it was just down closer to the resistance or
the support
floor. Yeah, and so I was looking at it there. And so here I was like, okay, it's done one little bounce, and then the next bounce is lower rather than higher.
Yeah.
So I didn't quite see something super nice to like get in on. And you're obviously looking for it to break that trend. And so then it like kind of broke it and just went straight up. And I was maybe hoping that it would do a little like head and shoulders pattern, but instead just ripped up.
Yeah, I kind of pull back here.
Yeah. And then I saw you posted something about what it was looking like on the ES. And I was like, that's much more clear of a like comes down and then goes up.
Yeah, like the ES had much more of, like a head and shoulders where it had a spike here and then it made a new low.
Yeah.
And then instead of, I think this, where NASDAQ made a new low, like you're saying,
yeah,
the ES just made a new high.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like I wasn't trading this morning really, but yeah, getting in above, kind of above here would have been where I would have got in, because you would have been getting in on essentially a break.
On that. Yeah, because you're looking at to break that long
candle
or wick, right?
Yeah, the high of this candle. Like the problem is like it's not a it's a little more congested of a
Yeah.
bottom. Like it's not like a nice clean where it's like, okay, you see it pull back here and then you're like, okay, well when it breaks this, I'm gonna get in.
Yeah.
Like it's still doing that here, the price, but it's definitely very,
Condensed.
yeah,
It's almost like it did it all in that
it's
two
more it's like it's
candles.
doing like this, and then you're like, okay, well that's I'll get in when it breaks that essentially, because it still
Got it.
kind of does a little bit of a pullback. And I think the idea is like it's still showing you that the downtrend is slowing down and it's
Yeah.
like losing momentum, because it's we had big spike here, a big spike lower here that made a new low, and then it's just kind of instead of you'd think there would be follow through with this bearish candle right here because it's
Yeah.
just a big bearish candlestick. So you'd assume, okay, the next few candles would go down. But instead, like it does another choppy candle and then it makes a new low by like one tick. And so then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, if it reverses all the way up here, that's going to be pretty strong.
But it's probably gonna keep going.
It doesn't like get as far down as the NASDAQ did. Like the NASDAQ did,
Went all the way down to
um,
the resistance floor.
yeah, where is it? Yeah. Like it came down and like tested it much better. And like here, it actually broke it on the 5 minute. So it did a minor breakout. But like, if you think about it big picture, it's like, okay, it's still coming down to this low area.
Yeah.
Like really like having
Yeah,
your
if
box
you
up
drag the
here.
low a little bit bigger,
Yeah,
yeah, it
like
works
that's
better.
totally fine. And so it's like it didn't really like miss that, and even if you just think about, okay, well, it came down to where this originally bounced
Yeah.
and then it kind of exploded.
I've had a couple of the spots where it kind of gets down and does that little consolidation thing. I don't have a good indication or gut read on whether that's just a consolidation and then it keeps going lower or whether it's a consolidation and keeps going higher. Like I've got it down that that's like a decision point for going one way or the other, but
Yeah. I think for me here, so like the big thing with this common pattern where the market, is in like an uptrend and then it does this overnight range that you're going into in the market. I often
yeah,
like think, okay, unlikely that the market stays in this during the day because it's such a small range. It's just
yeah,
overnight, it's these are definitely minor levels. They're not big like levels off of a 15-minute chart. But I still think they're important because they can, just because trade on a 1 minute chart, and if the swings are big enough, they can still produce a good trade. The main thing is I generally think of, okay, well, I just want to see how it reacts to these zones. Like if it comes down here, is it going to bounce and I can get a swing? Or is it going to come down here, bounce, and then break and the move for the day is going to go lower?
yeah, yeah,
And I think a big thing is like, okay, the big uptrend, we're in an uptrend right now. And so for me, that puts my bias more of, even if the read or I'm a little less confident in reading into the candlesticks here of having a clear signal, I'm going to say, well, I think my bias is more to the upside because it's likely we do a fake lower and then, break to the highs and potentially trend the rest of the day versus
okay,
if it came up here betting that it's going to go short. I think that's a weaker of a play because again, the big picture is the market's bullish.
yeah. Like in the big picture, this is kind of like a consolidation, and then you keep going up
Yeah, and
because it's been
so
going up.
so even though, on a 1 minute you're taking a reversal trade right here, you're really big picture, you're just buying a pullback that you're expecting to continue higher.
Yeah, because overall, you're thinking about the big trend.
Yeah. And
Maybe
yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
maybe something that would be helpful, and that I had a question on from last week was, could you kind of talk through about market activity over the day of like, because it always seems like it starts off really energetic and then kind of slowly slows down over the rest of the day. And is that a fair assessment or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I only stick to it really like the first 30 to an hour, minutes to an hour, just because pretty much when the market opens, there's almost always volatility, or that's on average, that's the highest amount of volatility in the day.
Yeah,
Um, or volume, which would create volatility. And then as the day goes on, it's way less likely to
things just happen slower.
yeah, things either happen slower because the volume has gone down. And like today was a great example. Like we had great swings in the morning, and even here there was like funky swings. But as time goes on, a lot of the time is it just starts to dwindle and like this volatility gets reduced and reduced and reduced. And even like here, like it made a swing like all the way to the downside. It's like trading in this is like really almost impossible, I find.
Or it's just not as consistent.
Yeah, I just find it not as consistent. And then also for me, just the trading, you can come in, capture, or be available and ready to take a trade during the times when there's really high volatility on average. Because again, like you have to think about, okay, can I do this every single day?
Yeah.
And I find it way easier to focus on this beginning part of the day that often has volatility and then just leave and not even think about trying to wait for this, because a lot of times it's like I just get so bored even sitting and watching this for an hour or like 2 hours. It's like some days you'll have crazy movement the whole day, but it's so rare that on average it's just you're just gonna get so bored and drained and
You're just
start
gonna burn
hit it.
yourself
Yeah,
out.
and you're just gonna burn yourself out and when you're burned out and like you're not focused in trading, you're just gonna make mistakes.
Yeah. No, something I definitely like about your strategy is that you can kind of sit down and do it for like an hour, hour and a half in the morning, essentially before anything else happens, because at least on the West Coast, it's opens at 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it's an early morning, but it's
Nothing
over
else is
quick.
happening at 6:30 in the morning. So after it went through this whole upwards, then I was watching it through here. And to me, it was like, okay, it's made kind of, I guess the way I've been thinking about this is I've been looking for like head and shoulders. And so I'm like, okay, there's shoulder
Yeah,
one, now or like bounce one. Now I'm looking for a second bounce. And it kind of does that. And then it just pukes lower.
yeah,
And then like immediately comes back up. And it's like, okay, I think ultimately it kind of forms like something that looks a little bit like a head and shoulders. But it's also just
mm-hmm.
like over such a long period of time. And maybe that's like an acceptable period of time, and I just don't know what I'm looking for, which is completely accurate.
Yeah, so there's a couple things here. One, for me, when like one swing happens like this, I find it rare that another swing
Happens
happens.
back.
It
Yeah.
can, and so like I was definitely paying attention to this too, because I still thought there was potential. I thought there was potential for the market to, if it comes down to here and it breaks lower, it's like that's a big trade.
Yeah.
And so being open minded to that, and so and it was this was a super fast move up, and I would say unhealthy move that had reason
Yeah.
to give up, and like you're saying, like I wouldn't want to short here or even like. Sometimes I'll just look for a high and then a lower high and then go lower. And it won't set up really a full head and shoulders.
Yeah.
But like this is something that I've realized you don't want to get in on. Like you don't want to just put an order down here, expecting it to break this chop range and then, get in if it does, because often this can like, it can break lower and push higher. Especially on a day like today when the bias, at least my read, was like, okay, major uptrend.
Upwards bias.
Like I
Yeah.
think we could just be, it's more likely that this just continues to trend higher. But, when it had this big crazy candlestick that then failed back in and I think broke this little minor support here, like, once you start, I think, reading into kind of the candlesticks there and the more micro patterns, I think it's really opens up the door to take a trade to the low side.
Okay.
The problem is obviously this candlestick is huge,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to just put in an order below this level and get in short there. Again, like I still same philosophy of like I want to see that head and shoulders, that lower high happen, because in these instances, like you can have these big candlesticks that just all of a sudden rip lower and then like reverse.
Yeah. Because it in and of itself is a pretty unhealthy move.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things I've been semi struggling with is letting the market tell me what's happening versus trying to predict what's going to happen. And so essentially like how many candlesticks do I need to let it, and maybe it's some of just where I am right now. I'm just like I need like letting several candlesticks form for me to be like, okay, well now it's reversing, it's going down or it's ripping up versus like trying to predict that and be
Yeah, I think some of that just comes with time. Because and sometimes, you just have a bias and you're wrong. Like, it's okay.
yeah.
Or it's like, it's just the market. Like, in this today, it's like the market did do this crazy move and then punch back up and then punch back down. And when it starts to, so for me, for this trade, I would have liked a short if it, because I think this big candlestick here could be like the start of a huge sell-off. Like, it is crazy momentum, and with the volatility the market's had recently too. But the thing is, it's like I do want to see kind of what, I don't want to just get in short right below the candlestick, because that's
Yeah.
often these candlesticks can just whip you out, kind of like it actually did. I'd want to see, essentially what I was looking for was, again, like looking at more the structure and where reasonable market trends and stuff would happen. Like, here is like kind of this previous support. And so I'm thinking, okay, it broke that. I want to see it come up here, test it, and fail. Because to me, that's like showing you kind of that stair step pattern down.
Yeah.
And it breaking, a structural, logical thing you can read and see. And so if it did that, I would have got in short below this.
Yeah. So you're looking for it to re-break that downwards momentum, essentially confirming it.
Yes.
Because right now it said, all right, we weren't sure about going up. We puked lower, and then you want to see it come up and be like, test that level, not go through it, essentially confirm that it doesn't have upward pressure, and then actually break through that low, and then you would get in.
Yeah. I mean, even here when it made, so it's like, here it broke up, but even here when it made this, like, I was interested in getting in short here after this push down, but again, like, I needed it to come up here, like, do like a little 50% pullback of this big candlestick and then break the low.
I guess I'm thinking of it like right hand shoulder. You're looking for it to come up, show that it wants to go down, kind of pull back a little bit to confirm, and then actually push down through. Okay.
I mean, I think not always, but like in this case, because this is already after, it's like, okay, here's a big candlestick that failed, it's starting to kind of act weird. And kind of like you're saying, like, once it starts to do this over too long, like, I think, the good entry would have been here after this big push lower, but because that didn't work out, it's like, okay, now it's starting to,
and this is almost like 30-minute time frame.
Yeah, like, since it's starting to chop basically for like 30 minutes, and so it's like, it just gets to a point where it's like, and it's past, the kind of 10 o'clock reversal time, and it's already done like one swing in the day. It just starts to get to, I just get to the idea where I'm like, I'm not really interested. One thing too, I didn't really notice this. I don't really notice this very often, but it was exactly at 7,000. And so that's kind of a big psychological level that a lot of times can cause a little chop or resistance or support depending on where things are at.
Interesting. How often are you then paying attention or thinking about the like 11 a.m. potential point?
I pretty much never do it.
Okay.
Just because, like, again, that requires me to stay another hour versus just focusing on, okay, what's my read in the first 30 minutes, trading based on that.
Does something seem like it's setting up? Yeah.
Yeah, and then, I feel like it opens the door up for, well, you're trading longer, so you're more tired, so you're going to make a worse decision. And then also, like, oh, if you missed a good trade in the morning, you might try and force something.
Yeah.
Which I've definitely
essentially
done.
Like, oh, I've been putting a bunch of work in. I should be able to get a trade. Or like, I need to make a trade to make this time that I've just put in pay off, versus just seeing if something's happening. If it's not, move on. If it is, perfect.
Yeah, that's why I feel bad about it sometimes getting off that fast, especially if it's like I'm in my chat room or whatever. But it's like, that's what I'm doing. Like, this is my strategy. I'm sticking to it. Like, that's where I find the best trades for me and what works for me. And so it's yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, this is kind of tangent from what we're talking about, but just like in the chat room, it seems like there's a bunch of people who trade similar stuff, but slightly different things, or at least put more trades in and have some like additional little, I don't know if they're indicators or what, but other things of bits of information they're paying attention to.
Yeah. I mean, everyone just kind of makes it their own, adds their own variation.
Yeah.
Like someone was talking about the other day of like, oh, well, what about, if you see this happen and you think that it's not going to go down, what about taking this as a buying opportunity to go higher? Like, instead of, if the reversal, with the idea of, oh, if the reversal is going to fail, like, why not take the continuation trade? Because, most likely you're at this inflection point where it's going to choose a direction.
Yeah. And if it didn't go down, why not choose up?
Yeah, and I think it can work, but you know, you can also have days like this where it's you just get chopped out either direction, and I think it opens the door for you're adding on a second decision of, and even though it seems like it should be simple in theory and practice, it's I feel like instead of you know, for me, it's okay, it's coming up to here, it's showing signs that I don't want it short, so I'm just going to be done. Versus, okay, it's showing signs that it doesn't want to short. Now I have to think about all the signs to go long. And again, like it can, I think it can just complicate things. And sometimes you can think, oh, well, I'm seeing signs to go long, so I'm not going to take the short. And then you actually miss the short.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I'm an idiot. You know, I should have just sat, you know, again,
Yeah.
it's trying to just simplify things to like almost a dumbest amount of level of strategy, so then you can't mess it up as much with your mind being stupid and you trying to just complicate
You
things.
can't overcomplicate it,
Yeah, because that's
which
really
seems like
like
it'd be so easy to do.
that's really like what messes people up as trading is they just overthink things when it's like the hardest part is just keeping it as simple as possible.
Yeah, it's been tempting to try and like figure out some of the acronyms and other things that people are using to trade in the chat room. I'm just like, nope, I will skip that. I have other things I'm trying to learn and do, so I will
Mm-hmm.
stick to Riley's method.
Yeah, because it's just the thought of like, oh, well, logically, if I learn something else, shouldn't that make me better or make my win rate better? And it's like it just doesn't necessarily. It's the same thing
Yeah,
with like, oh, well, trying to add on taking continuation trades. It's like, oh, well, shouldn't that make me more money? Because now I'm taking twice the amount of trades potentially, and it's like, no, not necessarily.
it was really interesting in my like one of my classes. The professor was like an old like professional trader, but he was going through. He's like, yeah, there's all these variables you can bring in to help track different components and everything like that to try and get a better guess. But like ultimately, it came down to like three variables that had the highest likelihood of like
Yeah.
like momentum was one of them. I was like, yeah, most of the time momentum wins. Like you can include everything else, but most of the time it's going to be momentum.
Okay, so this was like the market was kind of here. I think it actually opened up here, but pretty much
Yeah,
just
it
sold
opened.
off.
Yeah,
But the idea was it had a huge rip the day before, and just because the market was volatile, you know, my thought was like, okay, well, we might just rip this back lower and give this move back up. Go that this is on a 15-minute chart, and then going into a smaller chart, you know, it opened up here and kind of just sold off. And so there wasn't a spot to get in short, which I would say was the better read or better, I guess, higher chance of a move just with like, you know, thinking about giving
yeah,
back this
grabbing
big
it on the
move
way
up.
down. Yeah,
Yeah. And so, you know, it kind of just kept selling off, sold past the 10 o'clock reversal time, and then kind of just started to sit here for a while.
yeah, went into a little like sideways channel almost.
And so my thought process on this was, well, we did have a big sell off. We could give this move back up that it's had. And so I think one mistake I did was I was trading way longer than I should have. Like once it kind of went into this chop, I think it's more likely that, you know, usually these unhealthy trends, like the trade we were talking about this morning is like they snap back quickly, right? And so, I mean, almost exactly like this morning on the flip side is it just started to kind of doing a volatile back and forth. But like, you know, potential reversal spots I was looking at was my thinking was, okay, well, my target for the way down would be this. Like
Yeah,
it essentially giving back this spike up it had. And so I would think that okay, when it hits this, it might reverse. Or like here's some kind of gap that it filled. There's like this little gap here
mm,
between when the market closed one day and opened. Sometimes those can be zones as well.
yeah. I think that was over the weekend.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so, you know, that's kind of what I was looking for. And then also, like you kind of mentioned earlier, the 11 o'clock reversal timing of thinking, okay, well, maybe this will reverse at kind of 11 o'clock and we'll start to
Yeah,
get some movement up, especially since it's kind of has shown a slow in momentum here. And so I actually jumped in on a long right here. Because the whole time I was kind of watching this, I was thinking, okay, I want to see it make a higher high. Like it made a higher low here, but I didn't get long because I wanted to see it make, you know, because in a spot like this, I'd want more confirmation because it's more likely it just keeps going down. You know, every time it makes a new high, it's lower and lower. And
Yeah.
so I think confirmation of it changing that is when it kind of breaks this. And so like it broke this, pulled back, and then actually it kind of held this, which I thought was a good sign. Kind of what we were talking about earlier of like coming
Yeah.
back to
Yeah.
the previous swing and now,
Test to see if it wants to go low.
yeah, now realizing, okay, that's support. So I actually bought in at the high this candlestick. And then it, barely made a new high and then kind of reversed lower from there.
Yeah.
And I think like this is a good read for like the trend potentially shifting. But big picture, like kind of in hindsight a little bit for me was my mistakes were staying too long. And then also I do have a pretty common rule that I follow is if it's trended down like that long and that like this is a huge sell-off actually from here to here, even though it fits on my screen, like this is pretty much 50 points, which in the ES is like a huge move. And so and like going off of here, right, like this is a huge move really fast,
Yeah.
that has a lot of momentum. And there is the idea of like, oh, it is unhealthy. But the same idea with this move up being unhealthy the day before, like I didn't even think about trying to bet this to the short side with the idea that, okay, well, more likely these kind of moves.
It's just trucking up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got so much momentum and it almost needs overnight to work
Cool
off
off.
and then it'll flip. I think literally our last session we were talking about this.
Yeah, we
And
were.
I was like, oh, it probably is going to either reverse tomorrow or, maybe midday or the next day. Which is kind of funny now looking at it in hindsight how it just ripped the next day. So it's like usually it takes something like that. And even here, it's like, okay, it sold off the whole day. It had a little bit of a bounce into the end of the day just because it got so overextended. But, then the major trend kind of came into play and it did like kind of come back 50% of this move.
Yeah.
Which is like a healthy pullback in the trend before it continues lower. Big picture.
Yeah. No, I think because at that same spot that you got in, I was looking and just had some notes down that were like, oh, this looks like a good spot. Like it's broken that little channel, so it's changing trends. And especially when like I think my chart was probably zoomed in even a little bit more to cover essentially, I don't know, call it like 5:30. So what is that, 8:30 onwards? And so in this, it doesn't look like too crazy of a down or anything like that. It looks
Mm-hmm.
much more plausible that like, oh yeah, looks like a great spot for a reversal.
Yeah, and, I mean, it could have totally done like it's like it totally could have, but I feel like it's like that's where it's the good lesson of getting too sucked into the smaller time frame and
Yeah,
reading to the 1 minute chart.
yeah,
When if you just glance at the bigger picture, I mean, I think it was pretty much, if I try and make sure I get the pricing right on this, it was pretty much here. And it's like, that is, for me, like that's in the middle of the main range. Like there's no, like even though it's giving this move back up as a good target, that's a target for a trade you're in. I don't use that
yeah,
as necessarily a level.
yeah,
And so like, to me, there's just no reason to bet long there, in hindsight and really reading what the market's telling you, and so it's hard sometimes to, you make mistakes though, and that's part of trading. Like you get sucked in or you stay too long. That's why, that's why I don't like to stay long, is because I like a long period of time trading, because it's like makes me way more likely to just get sucked in and FOMO into something or just make a bad decision like that.
yeah, yeah. Something I think I wrote down either that day or the next was like, don't think in terms of I want it to blank. Think in terms of let's see if it does blank. So rather than being like, okay, I want it to give me another little bounce or another top. I want it to do this. Just be like, let's see if this happens. Because I think if the like I wanted to, I feel like I'm more likely trying to read it or make it happen. Being
Yeah.
like, oh, that looks like maybe that's my bounce, or maybe that's this, rather than just did it actually do that? You're just adding bias onto what's happening.
Another thing I think too is like trying to think of like for this example of like, okay, as it's coming down to this area, it's like, okay, it's still clearly in a move down. It's still making lower lows and lower highs, but we're near a zone. Like we're near
Yeah,
in the sense of like, I know there's potential coming soon, like you're saying. And so instead of being
yeah,
like, oh, I want it to do this, another thing I think about is like, to get in a trade, what would I want to see? It's
yeah,
like, it's not like I want it to do this or I need it to do this. It's more of like, I'm only going to get in if it does blank kind of thing versus, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, trying to, essentially the main idea is trying to have it pre-planned out of what you want to see to execute your plan. And so you're waiting for the market to come to your already figured out idea versus, oh, I'm just kind of sitting here watching it all of a sudden, and then, oh, shoot, it did this big candlestick here. I better just jump in long and, bet that it's going to go
Yeah.
higher.
Hope. Yeah.
Because that just, you don't want to be reactionary to the market, right?
No. How do you trade around when it seems like the market, obviously it's not hitting new lows, but when it's hitting like lows that it hasn't been at for a while?
I think we kind of talked about this last time, at least with highs.
Yeah.
Yeah, like here in this downtrend, like we broke this big level, and so it's like, okay, well, I don't really have a, even if I scroll back on a daily chart or something, like there's no
Yeah. It's
support.
nothing for a long time. Yeah.
It's kind of just like, yeah, you just gotta wait. And
Yeah.
I mean, once it puts this in, like even here, I'll say, okay, I'll draw a level here and see when it comes down here. I'll look for it to react on this because it's like, okay, well maybe it double bottoms and I can get like a little trade right here.
Yeah.
But then otherwise, yeah, it's just kind of waiting because
Yeah.
it doesn't happen very often, at least in the market conditions we're right now. But when it does, like it just, even with this, like if this was an uptrend into new all-time highs, and you would just be saying, okay, well, there's, this high that it's pulled back from. I'm going to see how it reacted there. And then it does this, right? If the market opened up here and then it moves along and you say, okay, well, there's a new high I put in. I'm going to little double top and put it in a level there. And then as time goes on, I'd only draw this about after this kind of stuff here.
Yeah.
And then same thing of like, okay, well, it's got this, like this morning, right? It had this like little bracket. And so you go into the day with that now, but that's just how you, over time would update your levels and then, delete them. Or you could even say, well, this even matched with that high.
Looking back on it, I mean, yeah, we essentially talked about it on the high side. And also it's very back to the what we were just talking about of the like, I want to trade in this rather than just let's wait for everything to happen and unfold in front of us.
Yeah.
Cool.
I guess there's this trade from last week too that I entered that we could briefly talk about.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So this is when the market was pretty much right here. I think it opened up like this. And so like we were still kind of in a downtrend. And so the thought was like once it kind of got up to here, I think this is kind of where the short was. It did kind of break this, but my thought was like, okay, well, we've kind of come up to here. And maybe this is, me not sometimes being a little aggressive about the levels I draw. But thinking, okay, well, had this moved down.
What do you mean by that?
I think maybe looking for levels in spots where it's not as clean, quick example is here for this one. It's like, okay, we had this sell off here and we've given up. That move, kind of exactly like that last loss I did was like, okay, well, here's a target for this move, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good spot to short.
Yeah.
Like I was talking about over here, as it came down here and like using this as a target, it's not necessarily a good shot. Like it's basically in the middle of this range.
Yeah.
Betting this. It's kind of same thing here of like, well, it's given this move back up, but big picture, it's kind of like there's just some garble here or whatever. Like there's not clean swings versus like, today, this morning, right? Like this is
It was
clean.
very clear.
This is very clear. Like even though it's a small range, like the levels
this
this
has been the most clear that I've seen.
Yeah, like these were clean. And so that's where it's like, again, I can always work on being more patient too, but if you can just be more patient and be like, oh, this is a spot, but I'm just not gonna, it's just not a good level. I'm just gonna wait. You're probably gonna be more profitable. But again, it can be hard because like here, it's like there's so much movement and you're not taking trades and sometimes it gets the better of you, right?
Yeah.
But so that's where this zone was. I think, or I was like looking at this low here, thinking like, okay, well, it had this kind of bounce range. And so that's kind of what this level was here. And so the market broke out of that and came lower. And we're actually at a good timing. Like, 9:30 market opens. It kind of just shot up, which was a nice spike. And then it just went into this kind of trend. And what made me like this was it had kind of a spike up here and such a big pullback of good momentum and kind of breaking below this kind of chop it had. And so my thinking is, it's kind of making that head and shoulders right here. where it makes
Yeah.
a new low, pulls back. I kind of see how the market reacts to this pullback. Um, and then I think this, if it goes
So
down, it opens the door to this.
yeah, you're waiting for that candlestick to close below the green one, and then you would get in,
Yeah, I mean,
is the basic idea.
I think I was just watching it, but like the idea was, yeah, I put in a stop order here, and then was gonna see how, because it's like, okay, I think this is a good enough attempt, especially this candlestick right here. Like as it's forming, I'm thinking, well, if it's gonna make a double bottom here, this is probably the candle because it's showing some strength right here and attempts to go higher. That's probably the candlestick that's gonna do it. But
Hmm.
because that over this candlestick that essentially fails, then it's like, okay, well, I think if it breaks this, that's great to the downside. And, there's a little bit of,
Real quick, would you not want to wait for it to finish forming a candle that is like at the end of this candlestick, get in with a buy below it?
you can. I think sometimes without having like a real good rule for each, sometimes I'll wait and sometimes I won't. I think often, generally, it's I'll wait if it does like a big spike and I want to see how the market reacts to that, or if it's like I'm a little doubtful, I want to see how, and I think the market's just gonna fake lower and go higher. I'll see how it, essentially breaks this new low. If it's just gonna break it in reverse, and like you said, I put a stop or my entry kind of below this candlestick here. But like if it already has done like a pullback and I'm confident and kind of happy with where things are at, then I'll just kind of get in at the break of a new low. Because, for me, like that's making a new low and that's
Mm.
kind of confirming that this is a lower
Yeah,
high and the head and shoulders is in play.
yeah,
I thought it opened the door up to down here. I do think that my one thing was thinking, okay, well, there is, because this is where the unhealthy move is. Before that, I think kind of here is a potential support level. And so,
just because it started being more calm there.
yeah, because it was like this was a healthy trend.
Yeah,
And so my thought is, okay, well, it's showing reversal signs up here. Maybe we'll get a healthy trend down. And if it breaks this, like you can see, I drew that level. If it breaks that, then I think we'll get the flush lower. So that's where like a little bit of a risk in entering this is compared to like if the head and shoulders happen right here and you're able to get in short as it breaks kind of this
yeah,
minor,
yeah,
those are the best trades because there's just nothing in the way and it will just crater super fast. Like those are when I get trades where it's like it's over in like 5 minutes or something and it's crazy.
yeah,
Versus here, it's like you kind of got to let it develop.
yeah.
And so here it made this little pullback, and I thought, okay, I'll move my stop down because it essentially made a swing low. And then here it's like, okay, I'm watching to see if it does a double bottom
Mm.
because it's
At which case you just slam it closed
yeah
or
or
move
yeah
it down even more.
yeah, and I mean like this looks super good right here, like this
Yeah,
attempt to go higher, big bearish candlestick, and
saying no.
it's literally like it's made a new low and it's basically breaking this support, but it actually ends up I think pretty much just here, just and so here it's tricky because like I don't want to close out yet because like it
Yeah,
did
it's
make a
still
new
looking good.
low and like this was a nice swing. Sometimes it's like you just got to let it do its thing. Like I've already taken some risk off and I'm happy with this level. Like it could totally spike here and sell off.
Yeah,
And so, I made the conscious decision to be like, okay, I'm happy with if I lose, $900, I'm happy with that. I think it was okay moving my stop from down from there because at this point,
hmm,
if it does if it makes a new high, I would just want to get out. Like it's probably gonna
yeah. Like
continue
that's a big
higher.
backup. Yeah,
But there's so many times where like this if it's gonna go down, like this high would hold. Like even if it pulls back here and then goes down. And so that's
yeah,
why, when it's like here and it's starting to look, I even drew that little line and it's starting to like make a spike up like this. I don't close out a break even just with the idea that it's like I think the trade is still valid and it could spike up
yeah.
and go lower. Like you just don't
It
want to
needs
over
some room to
manage.
work.
Yeah, you got to have, it's like you can't, I don't think you can take the risk off until like it's down in this area for this particular trade. But that's like something that'll just take time to get better at.
Yeah, yeah. We gotta get to entering trades first.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could do entering stuff and get you kind of like spooled up on
Yeah,
that.
let's do some of that. I know I still need to watch, I don't know, the second part of your course that's more aimed at I think entries and some management,
Okay.
so I can at least watch some entries part of it. Because I think you go over it like quickly in the first part, and then you're like, I have more detailed videos later.
Yeah. Well, let me just send you my indicators.
My courses, all courses. Yeah, I don't have the indicators unlocked on your website.
Okay, so we're just gonna do the three main ones. And for these indicators, anyone else that wants them, I'll leave a link for them in the description below. You wanna go to install them now, you wanna go to just your main control center and your NinjaTrader main control center.
Yep.
And then go to tools, import, and then NinjaScript add-on. And then that file you have that's like a zip file, you're gonna want to find out wherever that is. Usually you want to save it somewhere. Don't save it for like PCs and stuff. Don't put it in like your OneDrive folder. Just because that messes things up. You want it locally stored on your computer. And then just double click and essentially open the zip file with the import option. I gave you kind of like a special packaged one, so I don't know if that's going to work or not. If it doesn't, we can do a different way. But let me know when it's like says import successful.
Successfully imported.
Just right click on the chart and go to indicators.
Yep.
And then do you see this at the top? There's like a little evolved traders file.
I do.
Okay, and then you should have the bar timer in there.
Yep.
Double click that. That'll add it to the chart.
Just apply.
Yep. Well, no, just
Oh, just okay, gotcha.
and then double click the click trader as well. And I think that's kind of the two you have there. Yeah, and then so you should have those two, and then just the default settings is totally fine. You don't have to do anything with them. And then you can just click OK, and you should now have like this box on the right side, and then this little countdown timer right next to your candlesticks.
Okay, I see the countdown timer. I don't see the box.
You don't
But
have
we
this?
we closed out of whatever the thing that says like buy, sell, everything like that.
Oh, so you just need to go up to here and turn the chart trader back on.
Okay, yeah, now I see.
Okay, how it works basically is if you hold shift, and I'm gonna switch to sim account so I don't actually enter in an order. You can click it like pretty much, and then left click on the chart. It'll put in an order, and then if you do control a buy order, and then if you do control, it'll do sell. Settings that might mess that up for you. I don't. If you see primary order here and secondary order.
Yeah.
Those you want to put as stop market as your primary order. And I like to do MIT, which means market if touched, as your secondary order.
So market if touched is if it hits that, it just trades.
Yeah, so essentially if you put a market if touched buy order below the price, if the market just comes down here and touches that, yeah, it'll put it in a market order basically that'll automatically buy at the best available price. So essentially the idea with that is, okay, well, if I'm putting this in and the market touches here, I want to get in because it's at a price I want. I don't care if it slips on me a tiny bit. And slippage is like if if the market's moving so quickly, it'll fill you at a price that you didn't necessarily enter in. Like this is the price of this order is at 6,960.75, and if it slipped, it would enter in at something else. Like let's say I'll just move this for simplicity's sake, but it like slips all the way up here to 61.50. Like that would be a worse entry for a buy order because originally you'd be trying to buy down here. But that very rarely happens. Generally when the market's like extremely volatile. And actually, if you go to indicators again, I would say you do want to try and if you click on the click trader, once you've changed that market if touched button, also you can actually change the hotkeys on here. If you don't want your sell, like the hotkey to trigger a sell order, you can change it from control. Or if you don't want the buy order to be shift, you can change those to other items or other hotkeys. But for me, shift and control I find works. And then of course at the bottom, like just click on the template button to save as your default. So it always has those.
Is it then set up as on bar close?
Yeah, so that just allows you to, again, like when, like in these trades, like when I say, okay, well, I see this candlestick here, right? And my signal is that I want to buy above this candlestick. I'll just hold left shift and put a buy order right there. So that if it does, and as soon as it does reverse, it'll get in an order exactly at that point. So I generally just get in on stop orders.
Okay, so shift and just click.
Shift and then left click, yeah, with your mouse.
It's not doing it.
Do you have an, oh, you need a, okay, you don't have an ATM. This I'm assuming says none.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Sorry. You need to go and I think your option will either be do this drop down menu and click custom, and it should bring this up.
Okay.
So you don't need the order quantity, doesn't, you don't have to mess with that. Change the parameters to ticks, and then your stop loss and profit target. I just do this to like if I'm trading the ES generally, I'll just say, okay, I want my profit target to be, let's say, I'll just put it in, oh, it doesn't have points. Okay. Yeah, you can do this like 60 here for a profit target, and like 30 for a stop loss. And then just click OK. Actually, no, you want to save the template. I'll just save it as test. And you don't really need to change anything else.
Okay. Yeah, it should work now.
Okay. And then you can just click, so if it's here, you can just click buy market actually to test it. And then you can see it'll pretty much automatically put these orders for you, and that's what the stop loss and profit is. You're essentially, that number we put in there is saying, okay, this is going to be 30 ticks away from your entry. I think the stop was 30 ticks away, and then this is going to be 60 ticks away.
Okay, so that's setting your essentially 1 to 2.
Yeah.
And then your risk loss calculator does all that for you, right?
Yeah, we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
And so, well, so I always try and have these just far away, because the idea is like, okay, yeah, we'll talk about this in a second. It's like I have the risk calculator I'll always have drawn, and then I'll just say, okay, it's here. Essentially, like, especially with these, it's like I want them far away from the actual price in a safe way, because then, it doesn't take long, but, a couple seconds to be like, okay, here's actually where I want my stop, and then here's actually where I want my target.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I'll essentially move those, yeah. And then so just to kind of close this out. And then, yeah, the next thing is the risk reward calculator, because this will automatically update how your order quantity needs to do based on your target amount. So first thing is, well, just to see if it imported, if you go to drawing tools here, right click in drawing tools, do you see it right here at the bottom?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so that will essentially pull it up. And I think first thing is actually, if you go back to your control center, we want to go to tools and hotkeys, just so then you can put, because I don't think when we originally set up hotkeys, this was available.
No.
So if you scroll all the way down to bottom, it should be there now.
Perfect.
Okay. And then from there, do you have this drawn up now? Risk reward tool?
Yep.
Okay. And then double click on it to bring up properties. And then a couple things I believe that the default doesn't have on it is you can set your risk here. So, when you're starting out demo trading, I would always try and just do like, let me see if I go to the MES right now, which is what you'd be trading. And let's say like you try and risk $50 a trade. Like, I think that's a great starting point. So like $50 a trade definitely gives you some wiggle room. If you're trading small enough, like if you were only trying to risk $20 a trade, sometimes you would be, one contract would be too big. Like here, if I was going to enter in like this morning, when we were talking about this, like if this sold off here and I got in below this, like, and you're trying to only risk $20, like it would be too much. But like with $50, like you're much better. There's more flexibility. Same thing with like this long down here. It's going to be, sometimes it's going to be harder to get the right target amount of risk, but that's just kind of how it goes, especially when you're kind of just starting out with sizing and you don't have the flexibility of contracts. So yeah, set your risk currency to $50 here. And then I usually have, you want strict risk clicked off. And then I usually have unrestricted risk at like 10 or 15%. And what that does is it allows your risk to go over whatever you set. So like you're set at $50, and this is saying you can go 15% over that. With $50, that's not a crazy amount. It's literally $6.50 or whatever this is allowing you to do. Once it goes over that, it'll say 0 contracts, and then it will be like, okay, you're over your risk amount. You could always set that to be a little more if you're like, hey, like I want to get in a trade, if it's, especially when you're trading crazy small risks like this. If you're like, okay, well, I want to take a trade if it's like, I'm fine taking a trade if it's like $60 or $75 risk, then you can up this. But like once you get larger size, I would definitely reduce that down, because you don't need to be going crazy over your risk amount.
This is a dumb question. It doesn't want to let me move it around very well.
When you click on it, I have to click on this line to select it, and then it should have these little circles
Okay, there we
pop
go.
up.
That's working better. Yeah, I see the circles.
Yeah, you can't really select the colored lines. You have to click on the gray line.
Okay.
I don't remember if this is the default color settings either, but you can
Yeah,
always
it
change
is.
them down here. Okay.
What does moving the circles around do?
I mean, it basically just moves where the anchor is. Like it's just kind of like it has kind of like a default size, but it just helps like
Visualize
visualize
it? Okay.
like where you want. And then obviously like vertically changes how it works. The last big thing is you want this auto set quality is always off by default. You need to click that on, and then that should be the last setting. If you want to increase how many profit targets you have, pretty much you just have to do the same grammar that it has set up here in this little ratios box. You can literally just copy paste and add a 4.
Okay.
And I think if anyone's on the European or just non-American, it's slightly different how it's set in there. But that adds you another target if you want to see that. And then of course, actually in there's also you can change this to not have essentially price or a dollar amount of the risk. You can just change it to price or something, but usually risk reward, the default setting works for me. And then that auto set quantity makes it so this automatically updates like you were saying. So like if I, one contract, it changes this. So like if you then make it smaller, this automatically updates to 3, right? So
Got it. Okay.
it's super easy to say, okay, well, I'm going to put my stop loss here and my target here. And if I'm trying to target roughly $50 of risk on this trade, based on that size of a stop loss, how many contracts do I trade? Because when the market moves, and where that is, like that changes. Like here, from here to here is $50. And you don't want to just be trading 2 contracts every time, because down here, it actually takes 3 contracts to do that same risk, right? So that's like the huge thing about it that makes it so easy to just use this and say, okay, well, my risk is here, it's $50. I'm going to just put my order right here and with my shift click hotkey. And so it makes entering in like super fast. So these are like insanely big quality of life upgrades, I would say. And then, with the hotkey and the default, here's mine defaulted to my normal size. Then you switch over to because we're on the micro, ES right now, you would switch over to the normal size.
Be what, 4.5 or something?
Yeah, it just default to, because you can't trade half a contract, it just default to 4 contracts.
Yeah.
I mean, any other entry questions? That should be pretty much the main setup.
I don't think so. I think that's the nuts and bolts. It seems like it's just getting better and understanding exactly what I'm looking for
Yeah.
in terms of reversal patterns. Because I mean, like so far, most of what we've been looking at and what I've been looking at is the like larger sets of candlesticks and what they're all saying together. And this is much more what does this specific candlestick say, and how are these 3 candlesticks interacting together?
Yeah, and one thing I actually to bring back up about the drawing tool is visually what it does very easily to mess with your mind is, like let's say for here, right? The signal to jump in on this trade was here and the stop would be here because that's where the swing was. And so for this trade, I would draw my tool right here because this is, 1 tick below here, and then I'd enter here, right? And so, it's targeting my risk. I would, put my order in here and I'd wait to get in.
Okay, so you're putting it the bottom is 1 tick lower.
Yeah. Yeah, technically I like to do it 1 tick below because then that's officially broken that low. Same thing with this high. It's officially broken that high when it's 1 tick above.
Okay.
But so the thing that can mess with your mind is, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to get in on a stop order here. But if I enter in down here, if I just enter in on a buy order, on a pullback, that allows me to, you would adjust this down and you can start to say, well, I would hit 3x right here. I can get, 10 more contracts, like just the ratio, like your risk reward ratio, from entering in here, you would be up 2x when it's that price versus if you entered in here, you'd be up 3x.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy to like not get in, or instead of putting in that stop order, you put in a buy limit order down here and wait for the market to come back and fill you. If it does, and you run the risk of it not coming back and filling you and just shooting up. Or, I mean, if this case it broke up and then you'd wait for a pullback, but sometimes if you just wait for it to pull back versus not, you want to get in essentially when the signal happens, bottom line. I'm sure there's ways to maximize things in more ways, but like at the end of the day, it's better to just get in with the signal, and your maximizing is going to be sizing down the road.
Yeah.
Because like at the end of the day, the goal is to just capture some of this move. And even though at your current size, it's like, well, I would be, up X amount here versus if I entered it here, I would be up way less. I'd be up 2X instead of 3X. And it's like, well, you're still up money and you're getting in, you're not trying to like, I just had times in the past where I'll try and play with that. And it just,
Yeah.
again, it just adds another layer of just where you make mistakes and mess things up. And then if you miss it and you don't get in or whatever, like it just messes with your mind and your ability to just do clean executions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that's all I have on entries, unless you have any other questions.
I don't think so, especially not for nuts and bolts. I mean, the main thing is just trying to figure out exactly what I'm looking for in terms of patterns or trying to understand the couple candlesticks that go together. And some of that might be,
I mean, I think that a lot of that really comes up when it's like you start actually trading and it's like, it's like you actually have to make that decision of like, oh, I'm going to enter in here. And even when it's like demo trading, it's like you're still making that decision versus just kind of watching the candlesticks print.
yeah. Okay. Well, I guess, what do you think my homework or thing to focus on should be for the week? Just playing with some of the risk reward and looking for spots and thinking more about the entry and probably going through some of your course.
Yeah, I mean, I think main homework for this week would be, obviously everything we've already done, just continuously.
Yeah, just keep doing it. Just keep doing it.
It's the whole thing is just like building on itself. So you're always
Yeah.
should be looking and thinking about the main trend and like then thinking about the patterns and everything. But yeah, I mean, I think the main addition this week is even if you don't enter in a trade, like there's no pressure to enter in a trade now that you have the ability. It's more of like, okay, just get used to like you're saying, the risk reward tool and like what that feels like. Even if it's like you play around with just entering in a trade, during market hours, but it's not necessarily a trade that you're like, oh, this is following the strategy. It's more of like you're just entering in the trade, so it's like seeing what like moving this stuff around and like what like your risk reward tool is saying and just making sure all that's kind of just getting good.
Even just playing with the risk reward tool to get an idea of what do the different amounts look like for me risking X amount.
Yeah, because it's just adding another,
another layer.
Yeah, because I think it's like in these first few weeks, it's so much in the beginning. Like it just, even if it's just adding something that seems very simple like that, it just, adds something else that's completely new to think about. And that's why I think about it slow is important.
Perfect.
I'll send you this guide, and anyone else below can get it below. It's pretty straightforward and basic, but again, like this strategy is straightforward and basic. It'll just help you remember like the main things you're looking for and going off of there. Coolio.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much. This is super useful and helpful.
Of course.